Alrighty, folks, welcome back to another episode of our sub series here on Made the Parade called Tunes That Changed the Scene. And there was a lot of people really enjoyed the very first one that we did of these with the Black Skull and the tune Great Escape. We got a lot of views on that. I think there was about 2.4 thousand views that we hit on that particular video, and a lot of people really kind of connected with that, and there was a lot of suggestions around tunes and things that we should maybe cover on that. So we're back in this season with another episode of that, and looking forward to maybe doing a few more. If you're interested in seeing more of those, or maybe us doing a completely separate series of this, so instead of just putting it in as a bonus episode on the podcast, then let us know in the comments that that's what you'd like, and we'll definitely look into doing that, because we do have a long list of tunes that we'd like to cover on this particular series of podcasts. So make sure you let us know, and we'll definitely do our best to get into that. So as you may have seen from the artwork on this here, this is another iconic band that we are going to feature in this particular episode. And this band has, like the Black Skull, numerous tunes that we could pick out. We could probably go through each of the tapes that they've released and maybe pick out nearly every tune and talk about those. But in this particular instance, we are going to talk about another band from Glasgow, but this time, no surprise for me, it's the Pride of the Mile. All right, so again, just like the episode that we done with the Black Skull there, this artwork here probably stirs some memories for a lot of people, because this was the cover of the Miles first tape. And I remember, picking this up. And I think I actually picked this up in Nuts Corner Market. And for those of you who live here, you probably have some memories of that in regards to going up to Nuts Corner, maybe getting dragged up by the parents on a Sunday. And, but I always, whenever I joined the band, and there was a wee loyalist stand there. And this guy always seemed to have all of the latest tapes, all the badges and flags and everything. But it was the tapes that, obviously I was very much interested in. And I happened to spy this. I was thinking about this today, and I can remember, you're looking through all the covers of the tapes and all, and then I happened to see this cover there on Pride of the Mile Glasgow, and I was going, "Right, okay, what's this? Let's give that a whirl." And bought the tape, and the rest, as they say, is history. It kind of started what it seems to be like almost a lifelong sort of admiration for this band. So I remember putting it in and listening to it, being absolutely blown away by what I'd heard, and specifically the tune that we're going to focus in on this particular episode. And so what we'll do is we'll play the tune, and we'll give some thoughts and stuff after this here. All right, but the tune that we're going to focus in on, the one that we're saying, is another one that has changed the scene. Be no surprise to most of you, but it is Scarborough Fair and El Contrapasso, which is obviously a Simon and Garfunkel song, and but obviously done quite differently in terms of the flutes and drums of the Pride of the Mile. So let's listen to the tune now. And then I'll be in after that there and give you some other thoughts in regards to where the tune came from for the band, maybe what I seen it doing whenever it started to make an appearance, and lots of bands starting to play it here. So let's take a listen in to Scarborough Fair by Pride of the Mile Glasgow. we go, folks. Absolute classic Pride of the Mile. And I think it's almost one of those tunes that if you were to think of Pride of the Mile, that's probably one of the first tunes that will come to your mind is Scarborough Fair. And when I was thinking about this, as we were getting ready to record this episode, what is it that made this tune stand out? Why did this tune somewhat change the scene? And I think what it did for me was it opened up a level of creativity within the band scene to say that absolutely nothing is off off limits or out of bounds in regards to this because bands have a long history of using sort of either folk tunes or maybe trying to link into some pop tunes and things like that. There's a long history of that. But I think whenever someone started to use Simon and Garfunkel, especially off that classic album, and I think there was bands did Sound of Silence as well. It was whenever you hear the original song and then you hear that, you kind of going, you don't really put those two things together. I wouldn't have listened to Scarborough Fair and thought, hey, there's a cracking band tune, but obviously somebody did, and that person is a wee guy that used to be in the Pride of the Mile called Mursey. Mursey, I suppose, to some degree, would probably occupy maybe legend status within that band. He's responsible for a lot of the creative elements that took place in those sort of early 80s through to the 90s where the band was really on a roll. And I remember when I was talking to Scott way back in season two, probably episode four, and he tells a lot of stories about Mursey and how he was always coming down to practice with new tunes and arrangements of things, and the stuff that he just brought down, was to the guys was like, this is unbelievable stuff. So he's behind other tunes that have changed the scene as well. He's the guy that's behind Midnight is a Place. I mean, there's a really obscure TV show that I'm sure nobody even knows about. Very few people know about, and yet this guy listened to that and heard something that could be translated into a bond tune. And was he right? Of course he was. Absolutely 100% right. And the same here with Scarborough Fair and El Condor Paso. I mean, absolutely classic stuff. Even that drum intro, even now, the band play that exactly the same. So it's like when you hear them on the road or indoors, as soon as you hear that drum intro, you know what's coming next, and it's classic Mary stuff, So it opened up that level of creativity within the band scene. And as I say, it wasn't that people hadn't done contemporary tunes. It just opened that whole thing up to everyone's like going, give it a go, see what you can kind of come up with. And I think that's why this tune is worthy of being called a tune to change the scene. I suppose the other thing that makes it worthy of that as well is the fact that it's still being played today. I mean, there countless bands are still playing this tune, and some of them are playing it exactly the same way as you've just heard. Some of them haven't changed anything about it. They've kept the same drum setting. They've kept everything the same about it because you know what? It sounds great. Why mess around with it? I know there are bands that have, changed it about a wee bit and stuff. I think, but for me, in its original format there, it still sounds as fresh today as it did whenever the band first put it out there. You know what I mean? So a great, great tune. So one of the other things in regards to this record, you'll not hear it there because obviously this is a digitized version of a tape that came out nearly 40 odd years ago. And but I remember, a bit like whenever I listened to the skull, you were taken by the actual sound that was in front of you, the way the flutes sounded, but also the drums. You can hear the drums that were being tuned slightly differently. When you listen to the likes of these tapes, they're starting to be tightened a wee bit more so that, the rolls and all were a wee bit crisper. And then obviously the type of double beating that started to take place within the band tunes and also within the recordings. You can hear that on these tapes, and again, all of the different drum intros. Bands started to be known for their drum intros as well. That certain bands had a particular type of drum intro, and you knew that was them. Sometimes you heard that start date tune, and you would have been able to tell what band it was, and I suppose that carries through into this recording as well. I think if I remember correctly, whenever I was talking to Scott about how this was recorded, I think this particular tape was all done in one day, and essentially they went in, did a couple of takes, and this is what we ended up with. And I suppose yeah, you can spend a lot of time. I know for me, from my perspective, when I've done recordings, you can spend a lot of time working things out and trying to make things, perfect and right and all that there. But sometimes whenever your band's just on a roll, here, just hit that record button and go for it. And I think that's what this whole album has actually captured. It's captured a band in their element, coming up with all sorts of brand new stuff, loving what they're doing, stretching their own boundaries, stretching the boundaries for the scene. And I remember asking them, were you aware that you were changing the scene at the time? And I suppose in hindsight, it's bit of a naff question to ask someone, to be honest with you, because how could you be aware of that? All you were doing was like, we want to be creative, we want to try and do something new, and it's ended up having a massive impact on the band scene, and continues to have a massive impact on the band scene now. And I suppose the other thing for me is, I think whenever you look at the fact that bands were moving into the different type of music they were trying to cover, not only did it mean that nothing was off limits, but for me, it almost reinforces the fact that the bands are filled with musicians, and that again seems like a almost easy thing to say. Like, how could you not be in a band and not be seen as a musician? And again, it goes back to that, the public perception aspect, where they class these bands in a particular way and don't necessarily always see the creativity and the inspiration and the musicianship that's there as a part of the bands. And I think that's what a lot of these tapes and a lot of these tunes that we're talking about, that change the scene, started to really sharpen the band scene up. People started to get really serious about their drum settings rather than just playing the same thing over and over again. It pushed people on to try and do something else, and to try and get their flute playing a lot crisper, sharper, so that it actually stood out rather than slurred everything and it being a lot sloppy and that kind of thing. And it really was that, I suppose, maybe for want of a better phrase, it was a kick up the backside maybe for the bands back in that day, to really getting disciplined about how they marched, getting disciplined about how they looked, getting disciplined about how they played. And it was the real, I think for me, is that period of time was the starting point of an evolution in the bond scene that continues on to this day. I think without these recordings, without tunes like Scarborough Fair, I don't think the bond scene would be in the state that it's in right now, which is a state of high quality musicianship, large range of tunes, and again, as I said, nothing being off limits in terms of what they're trying to play. And it's inspired a whole generation of band captains and flute players to try things out. And I think that makes this tune and this whole album, I suppose, to some degree, a tune that changed the scene. And for me, I'll always be ever forever grateful for hearing this on the second tape that the Myle done, Miles Better, because it really, it was something that kind of just sparked something in me. And also, it actually changed some of the tunes that we played in the Raven, because the Raven had a lot of, that traditional bass stuff. Yes, we played some things like Moonlight and Roses and stuff like that there in terms of, other tunes, and a lot of marches. But whenever this came out, actually, some of the tunes on this we actually ended up covering. I remember us going to Scotland and playing Nations, and also doing Midnight as a Place. One of my standout memories with Midnight as a Place is, I think we learned this, and I actually started walking with the band on the drum, and in practice, one of those things where you're all, I hate saying this, but I was always doing extremely well on the drum when we were practicing. The first time we played Midnight as a Place on the street, I actually actually messed it up. In the wee da 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 part there, where no, it's just a flute solo, and I brought the drums in early when they shouldn't have come in, and everybody obviously gave me a whole pile of stick for that there. So that stands out in my memory, which is probably why I don't play the drum anymore. It was way too traumatic, and I just stick to the flute and know what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? So lots and lots of good stuff there. So folks, I hope you'll agree with me that we've picked out a tune that has changed the scene. If you know you have memories of listening to this tune or even just listening to this tape, get in the comments. You know, let us know what those stories are. That's what this all about. This whole series about reminiscing and you know going back in time and connecting with these tunes is all part of our journey even now. You know, we all have stories of things that really inspired us or when we heard something that really kind of got us going and we wanted to do more or you know try something new out and then it's great to hear those things. So let us know. But also make sure that you like the video. All right. Make sure you give us a wee comment. Share it with someone if you think that they're going to be into this here. But also make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. Remember, subscribing is absolutely free, and all it does is helps us in terms of the algorithm on YouTube, so the people who might be interested in what Made the Parade is producing actually get to hear about it as well. So, folks, there you go. That's the second installment of Tunes That Change the Scene, Pride of the Mile and Scarborough Fair, stroke El Contra Paso. What an absolute classic tune. Alrighty, folks, so there you go. Another episode in this series of Tunes That Change the Scene. Number two, and I couldn't think of another band that we would have put into that slot other than Prayer of the Mail. There will be more of these to come. We're going to spend a lot of time going through those first two Black Skull recordings, the first two Prayer of the Mail recordings, Glen Mavis, Blue Devils, all those kind of things. There's going to be all sorts of stuff coming out that particular Tunes That Change the Scene. What we're probably thinking of as well is we'll probably will, as we said at the start of this, run this as a series that goes alongside the podcast. But we're kicking off this brand new season with this episode. It's a nice wee lead into everything, and it's something that we're all kind of interested in terms of a wee bit of nostalgia, a wee bit of a look back at the past, and how with a wee nod to the future as well. So with the new season coming up, we're probably going to be, another week or so away from the next episode coming up. But what can you look forward to on the next season of the Made the Parade podcast? Well, as I say, lots of stuff there and lots of topics for everybody there. So the next episode that we're going to have, the first full episode of the podcast for this season, is going to be with the Greater Shankill St. Patrick's Festival, and that's going to also have a wee bit of a link in with the Shankill Old Boys, and we'll be talking to a guy called Mark Harrison in relation to that. So make sure we look into that one. Always good to kind of be focusing on our history and connecting to that other side of the culture. So, the St. Patrick's festivals are things that are starting to come up quite a bit right across the country, but this has been one of the first that was developed, and I'll be interested to hear from those guys to where that's come from and where they want to see it going in the future. So that's the lead off episode for the new season. We're also then going to have another legend on the podcast. All right, we've had a few on already, but I am absolutely delighted to announce that we will have Harry MacArthur on the podcast. This is something that you guys have been wanting for a long time, and finally, I had a WWE moment there, and finally, Harry has come to the Made the Parade podcast. All right, so we're going to have Harry on from the Queen Elizabeth Accordion Band. Harry is an absolute character, and we're going to be recording that episode on Campsie Day down in Londonderry, and I can't wait for that. I haven't talked to his sons and haven't spoken to Harry a few times before. It's going to be one heck of a conversation. Make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss that one. Keeping on the kind of theme of Londonderry, we are going to be talking to Billy Moore from the Saw Museums. Billy will be well known to a lot of us in the scene. Absolute gentleman, and he's agreed to kind of give us a wee bit of a tour, I think, around the museum. But we're also going to sit down and have a conversation with him about what the museum means to him and the whole connection with the Siege of Derry. So that's another one you're not going to want to miss out on either. There's a few more in the pipeline as well. So while we were talking about the Seas Museum there is another museum that we are going to visit as well, and I think you'll be interested in this one too. We're gonna go to the Saw Museum in Conleague, and I think, with, my own band having been at the Saw recently, and I know Rathcoole, Proud Boys are just back, and I think the Blues and Royals from Sydenham have just been there as well. The Saw and the story and the connection to the Battle of Somme is something that runs deep within the bond scene. Something that means a lot to us, and I know for everybody who's been to the tour of the battlefields, you come home from it, you can't help but be affected by what you've seen and what you hear while you're there. So we're gonna go down to the Song Museum. We're gonna, I think we're gonna get a wee tour around there as well. We're gonna look at some of the exhibitions and stuff there. Then we're gonna talk with the curators there and just about, what the rationale behind the museum, what it is that they're looking to achieve, and how I suppose we can further support the work that goes on there. Because I know the staff there also work at the Ulster Tower in France as well. So that's one that's coming up. I'm sure you'll be really interested in as well. We're also hoping to have the Kilclooney Honeys on. Yeah, so the colour party from Kilclooney will be on there. I know that's an element of the scene that we haven't covered at all. And it'll be also good to get some more ladies on the show as well. It's been very male centric for the best part of it. So it'll be great to get some more female voices on and do that. So look out for that. We're just waiting on a date for that to be recorded. But the girls there have definitely said they're interested in being involved. And I can't wait to have that conversation because colour parties have, and again, we were talking about tunes that change the scene. That's something that came in with a lot of these bands, and the changes that, were happening in the early 80s. The colour party started to become a major thing. And, Kilclooney's colour party is one of the best that's out there. So it was only right that we went ahead and featured them on the podcast. So really looking forward to having those guys on too. And another one that I'm hoping to get sorted out. I haven't talked to anybody about this yet, but given the fact that Pride of the Raven and Money's Lane were involved in the Belfast International Tattoo this year, I am hoping to have a few members from each of those bands to come along and talk about what that experience was actually like. And I think that that's another subject that's really interesting. I know we had an episode about tattoos on, I think, season two or season three. We had Mo Brown and Stu Warmington talking about tattoos and all that kind of thing. I definitely think, there's scope there for, the bonds here to be included in tattoos in a wider capacity across the world. I know there's a lot of invites out there. Funding's an issue, but we are going to talk about, hopefully, the Belfast International Tattoo this year and the role that two flute bands played there. I can't forget the accordion bands there as well. Maybe if we can swing it, we'll get somebody from Pride of the Purchase on and Edgarstown maybe as well. That may be an interesting scenario to have the flute bands and the accordion bands on together. So that's another episode that we are looking to do. Just checking my notes to make sure I've got everything. We are also then going to have a thing about the 12th of July. You'll notice that we had an episode there in the last season where we talked a lot about, what the 12th means to us and some of the things that evokes for us. But there's been a lot of talk recently, the last couple of years about ways that we could enhance the 12th of July. And we're looking to put a panel together to talk about that. I'm hoping to talk to a few people there who seem really interested in that. Let's get a date down and have a conversation about how we could potentially, use a full week to 10 days worth of events to celebrate the 12th and enhance it in some shape or form. So that's also coming up. I will also have some more reviews as well. There'll be more products for us to review. I'm sure there'll be more than a few flutes for us to be looking at. If you've been catching the socials over the last few while, quite a lot of new flutes have been released, so we're going to talk to some of the makers of those, and or at least review them anyway, and share that information with you. And if there's new releases or other things out there that we deem worthy of review, then we'll get into that as well. If there's something that you want us to cover on Made the Parade, then please get in touch with us. We read all of the comments, we take it all on board, and there's been lots of things that have come through that have inspired us to create new episodes. One of them is around bands that have disappeared. off the scene. And hopefully, if I can get the right contacts, I'm looking to do an episode on the Sons of Ulster from Glasgow. I know that's a band a lot of people miss. And another band that I've been asked to do this on has been the Sharpshooters. So hopefully, if I can find a few people there who are willing to come on and talk about that, Billy Gray, maybe from Fifes and Drums, if you're interested in that, mate, give me a shout. Would be well up for doing an episode on that as well. So, folks, there's lots and lots to come on the next season of Made to Parade. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. So until we start the new season, look after yourselves and take it easy.